everybody. This is Ken Quinn with U.S. Term Limits. We want to thank you for joining us this evening. Let me get Ron Hooper in the picture. Ron, how are you? Give me one second. A little technical difficulty here. I'm going to get Ron in here.
Well, Quinn, how has your day been going? There he is. Now you got
There he is. Okay, Mr. Hooper. All right, everybody. We are ready to rock and roll. We are U.S. Term Limits. I am Ken Quinn, Regional Director. I'd like to introduce my colleagues, Ken Clark and Ron Hooper. Say hi, gentlemen.
Good evening, everyone.
How's everybody? It is great to be with you. Hope you are surviving all the cold and the blizzards out there.
Yeah, well, I'm in Maine, and we don't have the cold and the blizzard yet, and I'm hoping it gets here soon because I want to do some skiing this weekend. So you guys out in Michigan that we're going to be talking to soon, please send it my way. So first off, we want to thank everybody out there, all of our Term Limit supporters. We really appreciate all of your support, and we are doing this tonight. We've been doing this now every Thursday for the past couple of months. So 8:30 Eastern time, join us. We're going to be together for the next 45 minutes or so, and we're going to be sharing a lot of good information. We got some really cool stuff to share with you tonight that's happening, especially in the state of Michigan. But before we get into that, why don't we have a little bit of fun, Clark, and do a little giveaway. So I don't know what you're going to say, so I'm gonna ask the question tonight. You can do the T-shirt.
Wait, you're afraid of the question I might ask?
Yes,
is that what I'm
afraid?
Hearing? Oh, you got to be kidding! You're not going to let me ask the question.
No. If you host it next week, you can. So
all
okay,
right.
this is how we do it, everybody. Here's a chance to win a lovely blue T-shirt that says you support term limits for Congress. And I'm going to ask a question. And the way to win is to be the first person that types the correct answer into our little thread here, our Facebook Live chat there. And Ron, if you can just pay attention to who gets it right, and we'll highlight that person once they type it in. So here is the question. As you all know, we're trying to propose a term limit amendment on Congress. Now, there's two ways of doing that. We need either 2/3 of both houses of Congress to propose it out to the states to get ratified. Chances are very unlikely that's going to happen. So the second method that we're also working on is we want the states to propose it. So here's the question. I want the number of states, not the fraction, but the number of states, number one, required to call the convention, and the number of states required to ratify the amendment. So the first person that gets that correct will win this lovely T-shirt, and I'll get that out into the mail to you tomorrow. So let's see what happens. And
I think
Ron,
we're looking for two numbers there, right, Ken?
Two numbers.
Two numbers.
And let me just jump into something. Now, I'm not going to get into the impeachment hearing and all that. I'm just so fed up with all of it, to be honest with you. But there's one thing I wanted to share. And Ron, I'm just going to back both of you guys out of this screen for right now. I want to pull up an interesting picture. So I saw this on CNN during the hearings. Take a look at this. This is an image of 5 members on the hearing from the Clinton impeachment trial on the same committee that are listening to the Trump impeachment. So it was 20 years ago. Check this out. 20 years ago. And these 5 members have not moved seats. They're on the exact same committee. This is why we want term limits. So those 5 individuals have been on that same committee for 20 years. Guys, that is just messed up. And that is why we're doing what we're doing. And that's why we need you in your states to help get this done so we can get rid of these career politicians that have been there for decades and get new people down there with fresh ideas. And we cannot stop. We have got to continue this until we get it accomplished. And so that's why we're doing this call, and that's why we need your help. And we're going to be asking for not only your help tonight, obviously, but we need you helping us in your state. So
Well,
Ken, why don't you or Ron share some words about?
yeah, I think this is why everybody's so angry when they see this. It doesn't really matter what position you're on. It's not relative here. It's the fact that these people are making these critical decisions for us, and they're not relevant in today's life. It just should make us angry.
At the end of the day, it boils down to a power struggle. I mean, it is a power struggle, and that's it. You know, and I don't know. I'm not going to get into it either, Ken. I'm going to leave it alone.
Leave it alone. This is where we all can agree. This is not a Republican or a Democrat issue. It's a power issue. It's the incumbent party that we have got to dismantle. And the only way to dismantle the incumbent party is with term limits, because I get sick every time I hear people say, well, we already have term limits. It's elections. Give me a break. We all know it's stacked. It's rigged. And the only way to get rid of these folks is to churn them out on a regular basis. It's just like keeping your hot tub clean, right? You got to put new chemicals in and change that water on a regular basis. And that's what we're trying to accomplish with Congress. So I'm off my soapbox. Do we have that answer yet? Has anyone answered that question yet?
I haven't.
Okay.
We're looking at numbers.
Okay, I'm going to ask it again in case somebody just joined us late. So here's the question: to win a term limits for Congress T-shirt, and hopefully I have your size. Here's the question: how many states does it take to call an Article 5 convention to propose an amendment, and how many states does it take to ratify the amendment once it's been proposed? So I'm looking for two numbers: the call and the ratification. And if nobody gets that, I'm going to be heartbroken. I'm just going to be heartbroken. But I think we'll get it. I think we'll get it. So anyway, I
plug those numbers into your chat section right under Facebook.
Yeah.
So if you know what those numbers are, just plug them right there.
Plug them right in. I don't see a lot. So let me also ask all of our listeners out there and viewers, please type in the state you are in. Let's do a roll call around the country. Let us know what state you're in. And I'm just going to highlight your name and have a little bit of fun with this. I love the Grinch that stole Christmas there. That's great. We have a campaign or something about like that. But anyway, Clark, okay. I want to get to the fun part tonight because we're doing something a little bit different than our typical Article 5 initiative. And this is something I want you to introduce our next guest, and you and Ron spend some time sharing what's happening in the great state of Michigan.
Well, go ahead and bring Scott Tillman in. Scott is our national field director, and this is the first time he's ever joined us on one of these weekly calls. So
welcome, Scott.
Welcome, Scott. Tell us a little bit about what's happening in Michigan, your home state, because we're gonna bring something else up here in just a minute. And Scott, I'm gonna let you call a ball on that. But what's happening?
Term limits, which we have in Michigan, are under attack, and it's something. It's not the first time we've seen it. Term limits, you can really tell they're working. The more angry, frustrated, and the more lobbyists are coming at you, you can tell your term limits are working. And we have them in Michigan here. We have the strongest term limits in the country, 6 years in the House, 8 years in our Senate, and the legislators and lobbyists hate them. Lobbyists really like to, essentially buy a politician and not have to buy a new one every 6 or 8 years. And the fact that, we keep that rotation in office going just thwarts their efforts. And, of course, it frustrates them to no end. They like to claim that it gives the lobbyists power. This is one of the go-to things for the politicians, is saying that term limits somehow give the lobbyists power. But we know that anytime term limits is on the ballot, lobbyists are spending against it. We know that in states like Michigan, where they have term limits, and in cities like Grand Rapids, lobbyists are there fighting to get them overturned all the time. So we know when the lobbyists are attacking your term limits are doing what they're intended to do. And that's what we're experiencing right now in Michigan. We have a lot of turnover because of term limits. And every time we get a new crop of legislators in there, of course, with term limits, they decide they're the only ones who know how to do the job, and that somehow, now that they're in there and they have the seat, that we can just leave it to them. And then, of course, we gotta go back and say, no, that's not how this works. You guys are there. You're going to do a good job. You're going to represent the people. And then in 2 years, we're going to have a different group of guys there, men and women, to represent the people. because over time you're going to start representing the lobbyists and representing other, inside the Lansing Beltway interests. So we're playing a little bit of defense. This time there's a little bit of a different attack going on term limits. They're actually coming at us with a court case in Michigan where they're suing the state, because that's who you sue, and when you don't like a law, you sue the state. They're suing the state over our term limits law. This approach has been tried in the past. This was sued. They're suing in federal court. This was the same First and 14th Amendment grounds were sued before, and it was the federal court that upheld state level term limits. So we think that they were doing this to give the legislature political cover, to say, look, there's a lawsuit and there's these different things that are going on. We really need to revisit this issue and maybe undo our term limits. But of course, we have a good organized group in Michigan called Don't Touch Our Term Limits, and we stepped up, got active, and we're not going to let them get a pass on it. We're going to go to the mat and fight for our term limits.
So is there an organized group, Scott, that's really resisting this? Are they investing money into this? Who's your main resistance?
Well, we have a group in Michigan called Don't Touch Term Limits, and it formed out of the people who originally were involved with the term limits campaign back in the early 90s when we passed our term limits. And it's not really a formal organization. It's really a loose-knit group of individuals who get together, and we keep in touch and keep up on the news. I'm very involved with it, have been, for a while, over a couple of decades now. And it's one of these, it's not formalized. So we come together when we need be, and then as needed, we come and ask for help, and we get everybody else together and doing things. We're very grassroots. We're very, it's a bunch of volunteers. It's not like we have a payroll or anything. It's a bunch of volunteers that step up and play defense when this happens. And it happens too often, in my opinion. Legislators need to learn their place and understand they work for the people, but they forget, and new guys get there and they think that they're the only ones who can do it. They go to Lansing, everybody laughs at their dumb jokes. Everybody tells them how great they are. Everybody wants to say, we love you. You're so smart. You're the only person who could do this job, because everybody wants something from them. Well, that's one of the reasons why term limits is such a good thing, is it keeps legislators down to earth and stops them from living inside a bubble where they get this big head. Like the guys that go to Washington, the men and women that go to Washington, they start thinking they're the only people who know how to do that job. And they start thinking that, they can walk on water and that everything they do is good and golden, when really just people need things from them. So they're constantly praising them and buttering them up just to get things that they want.
Hey, Scott, let's introduce somebody who's been on the ground out there in Michigan. So I'm going to introduce Mr. Jeff Tillman. Let me take my camera.
Yeah, this ought to be good, because you guys have got a lot going on in Michigan. So Jeff, take it away.
Well, we certainly do. I am up here at the top of the Michigan Mitten. I've had it referred today as Uperville. They tell me you're in Uperville now. You're going to drive like a regular person. A great bunch of drivers. None of them hit my big obstacle here, but I have had more thumbs up in the last couple days up here than I've seen anywhere. It's very exciting. A lot of support, a lot of interest. When I've stopped and talked to different media folks, I was on with Country 104.7. Craig did an interview with me today, and that's going to air on his news program tomorrow. And he said there's a lot of radar that's up and paying attention to what they're talking about and this whole term limits lawsuit, and a lot of concern about it, how it isn't justified at all. It's very self-serving. I've heard that stated. If my camera wiggles, it's because it's very cold up here, contrary to what you folks might be experiencing. But there's an awful lot of concern about the self-serving nature of our politicians trying to do this. So there's been several interviews. I'm going north now, as all the way to Lake Superior, and doing some TV with Fox Channel 6 tomorrow. So we're very excited to get this big fella out and about. He draws crowds wherever he goes and empties out gas stations and restaurants. They all want to come out and find out what's going on and get a picture, and hopefully we're going to come up with a winner for our name.
So for those of you who can't tell or who don't know, we have a giant pig on a trailer, and you can see it behind Jeff there. Jeff, why don't you give us, a view of that pig? We're taking this pig all over the state of Michigan as part of our campaign to defend term limits, to let the people know that the legislators are coming after our term limits. The only way the legislators get away with something like this is if they can keep it secret, or if they can get the courts to overturn it. Because term limits in Michigan, if you're going to go about it in any legal way, aside from trying to go and get the law overturned in court, is got to go back to the voters. And the politicians know that the voters love our term limits. We recently polled on it. It polls higher now than when it passed in 1992. When it passed in 92, we were at 59%, and now we're up at 69% of voters want to keep them the same and not change them. So we're taking this giant pig all over because, of course, politicians are pigs who just want more time at the trough, and the lobbyists are pigs that just want more time at the public trough too. So we're taking this around. The message really resonates with people. And to give you guys a little bit, while Jeff shows and pans around on the pig there, to give you guys a little bit more details on the lawsuit. This is a lawsuit that was brought on November 20th. Originally, there were 8 members or 8 people suing, all former legislators, most of which are now paid lobbyists or have been lobbyists since they left the legislature. Now it's actually, they amended it. Now there's 10. One of the newer plaintiffs that got added, when he termed out in the legislature, he went to a really cushy economic development job, working in a southern county in Michigan, and then ran for Congress. So he got a cushy job making $140,000 a year for a program that gets government handouts. And then what did he do? He went to his part-time government job apparently and used the rest of his time to actually campaign for Congress, and he couldn't get elected. So there's probably some sour grapes there where that particular legislator is concerned. But most everybody on this lawsuit are former legislators who then went to be lobbyists, and they want us to believe that somehow term limits disempower lobbyists, but suing to overturn the term limits. I honestly think that they believe that somehow they tell themselves that they're being altruistic and somehow that lobbyists are put in charge. Just not us. Apparently, other lobbyists are in charge. We're the good lobbyists. They have this idea in their head. It really makes no logical sense. And everybody understands that. Voters get that. They understand that there's a huge advantage to incumbency, and they understand that all the power lobbyists have comes from their relationships that they build and their ability to influence legislators. We don't need studies and to have big classes in education on term limits for people to understand that the power in Washington, D.C. right now, where we have career politicians, is in the hands of the lobbyists. And those lobbyists have really tight relationships with leaders in the House and leaders in the Senate. And that's what's a big part of the problem we have in Washington, is that those relationships need to be broken up with term limits.
So how are you combating this now, Scott, with Michigan? It sounds like you've got at least a well-organized group that's trying to overturn this. So what's happening other than the pig?
So we have the pig out there, and then we're also doing some voter education efforts. We are mailing into some legislators' districts to let their constituents know that those legislators have refused to stand up for the people's term limits. We called all the legislators' offices and asked them to commit to support and defend Michigan's term limits. And of course, they like going down to Lansing and being wined and dined by the lobbyists and taking home a nice big paycheck. Michigan pays our legislature a full-time salary for working essentially a part-time job. I mean, they just took off 3 weeks for hunting season. I wish I had a job where I could, work 180 days a year and get a really good full-time salary, making more than anybody, more than the average of my district is. And those guys have that job. And they once they get it, they think that they're the only ones who should be there and should know how to do it. And instead of solving the problems we need solved, they want to goof around and talk about, undercutting what the people went out and gathered signatures to put on the ballot, term limit.
Scott, let me ask you a question, because I constantly hear, and you just said something that kind of caught my ear. Whenever I'm talking to legislators, a lot of them say, well, you can't have term limits because this job is so complicated that it takes us 2 years just to find the bathroom. And now what you're telling me is that they think they're the only ones that can possibly do that job. I mean, it's kind of just the opposite. They contradict themselves.
Well, I know plenty of these guys, men and women there, take time off to go hunting. They take time off to go on trips. They take time to do all this other stuff. If it were really something where they needed all this education, either they're not doing the job right and not sitting down and learning it because they're getting paid full time and they should be doing that, or none of them who are business owners who have worked in business would hire somebody and let that person take 2, 4, 6, 8 years to learn the job. People think that 6 years isn't enough time. Well, let me tell you, you don't get 6 years. We elect you to a 2-year term, and we expect you to step in there and do our business and mind our business on day one. We don't want you to go in there and figure out how to game the system. We know what happens when politicians learn the system, when they get the institutional knowledge. They've got the institutional knowledge in Washington, D.C. And what do they use that institutional knowledge? What does that get them? That lines their pockets. Insider trading. They become millionaires on the taxpayer's dime. They get their friends and family jobs with foreign corporations, doing all kinds of crazy stuff.
They insulate themselves from the laws they pass, which just should make everybody angry when you see, and they're never forced to come back home and live under those same laws. And it's just, it's nightmarish, some of the things that they do, and then protect themselves.
Yeah, there was a scandal here just in the last 4 years where Congress had written special rules and were using the legal system to use taxpayer dollars to pay off sexual harassment, complaints, and then not tell anybody about it, not disclose any of the information. And the only resolution we have is when somebody, finally gets busted and the word gets out. But this has been going on forever. This has been going on for decades. They put in these special exemptions, and that's the institutional knowledge you have. The institutional knowledge to know how to set it up so that you can sexually harass your staff and pay for it with taxpayer dollars and not get caught on it. The institutional knowledge to figure out how to do insider trading and not get caught for it. That's the type of institutional knowledge the people don't want. And when we talk about institutional knowledge, that's what we get. We have more of a problem with institutional inertia. We passed a lot of, right now there's this big criminal justice reform movement going on because we had a lot of things that passed in the 80s and 90s that weren't that great of a thing. And not that great of ideas. 3 strikes, you're out, and putting people in prison for lifetime for things. Those people that were there, I'm not going to say one single senator is a presidential candidate now who maybe has, children with a problem with Ukraine or anything, but they are doubling down on the drug war, and they don't understand that, we can't afford as a nation to incarcerate a huge portion of our population for long periods of time. That's not good for their families. That's not good for, taxpayers. That's not good for anybody. And there's other things that we've doubled down on. I mean, the Washington Post this week has got this huge thing coming out about how much money we are wasting in Afghanistan and whether or not we should have gone there in the first place. Going there and staying there for 18 years and just dumping money at a problem. Is that the type of institutional knowledge that we have?
Well, think about this, Scott, because last week there was all these hearings, there was all this impeachment stuff and going on, et cetera, right? Then they finally, at the end of last week, realized they had a budget crisis that was going to hit when? Tomorrow. Now, do you notice that the government's not shutting down? Do you notice that nobody's talking about a quote-unquote budget crisis, and they only had this week to solve that problem? What does that tell you? Congress can come together any day of the week, any time. They would stop a shooting war inside the chamber halls themselves to make sure they had enough money to spend. Both sides would do that because you're not hearing about that now. That can only mean one thing. They passed the spending bill.
That's right. A lot of what goes on in Congress and a lot of the political back and forth that we get is all about one thing. It's about fundraising. And they're not cutting spending. They're not managing our dollars responsibly, but they want to stay in office anyway. So the institutional knowledge is obviously not getting us good fiscal management of our government. But one thing that term limits or the lack of term limits allows Congress to do is to essentially work a problem beyond what anybody in the public has patience for. We have a border crisis that if you're a Democrat it's very easy to go out and raise money on kids in cages. And if you're a Republican, it's very easy to go out and raise money on open borders and people sneaking across and doing illegal things. And it's not easy for either group to go out there and raise money on a compromise that actually solves the problem, like a guest worker program or other things that are common sense things that, you know, a responsible group with institutional knowledge that would understand how to do something might come up with. They're not interested in using institutional knowledge for the good of the country. They're interested in taking advantage of their position and using their institutional knowledge to line their campaign coffers and to keep spending money on all the different pet projects that they have for, you know, defense spending, for social program spending, for everything else to pay off their buddies. That's what they're interested in, and that's the institutional knowledge that we currently have in Washington, D.C. We definitely don't want it coming back to Michigan. We got rid of that, and we don't want it back.
Well, what are you doing for Term Limits Day in Michigan?
For Term Limits Day in Michigan, we're going to be out waving signs, and because we have things going on with the attack.
Scott, real quick, what is Term Limits Day, and when is it?
So Term Limits Day is the anniversary of the day that we passed presidential term limits. It's February 27th. And all over the country, we have people who will do different things. We do events. We do last year, people did dinners. People had speakers. People got together for coffee. People got together, held, you know, signs out by the highway, over overpasses. People got on radio shows. People spoke to classes. And this isn't, you know, just in our group. This is all the different term limits groups out there and everybody who supports the issue. There were politicians, both sides of the aisle, who are out there tweeting, doing things in their community. This is a day when we go out and specifically bring people together to draw attention to the issue of term limits. And we're gearing up to do some things in Michigan this year that because of the issue, we're going to get more people out and get more people excited about it. We'll probably do some demonstrations in some districts and some other things along those lines.
Excellent. Excellent. We're going to be doing this everywhere. And so we're starting to gear up for it now. If you've got ideas on what you want to do or how you can help for Term Limits Day, please let us know and we will help you. We can get you materials. We can do all kinds of things to help support your efforts in your state. But what we would like to see is eventually this thing just get bigger and bigger and bigger. That's how we're going to, this is a step to help us impose term limits on Congress. So please, if you've got ideas, type them in. Let us know. All of the regionals will put our email addresses in the comments section again so that you'll have it and you can get in touch with us directly. Ron is the Western States Regional Director. I run the South States and Ken Quinn runs the North. And we'll tell you exactly what those states are. You can go to our website, termlimits.com, and it'll show you exactly which state and which regional director is covered. But man, we want to make this big. We need your help to do it. And if you have any ideas, we would love to hear them and make it fun. This is a fun thing. This is a big deal. And we really want people's help.
Yeah, we're going to have different volunteer activities in different states. I know in Arizona, Jim Alevi's, I think, on the call, but we don't have him on the video part. But I know he's got some plans, and it's going to be good to get volunteers to come out that day and go down to the Capitol and get petitions signed and all that kind of stuff. So what date is that, gentlemen? What date?
27th for Term Limits Day?
Yeah.
You win a T-shirt.
How you want a T-shirt? I don't think you have enough of them yet. So
I missed what you were saying earlier, Ron. I was reading comments, making sure we didn't miss any questions, and you called me, what date is that? What date is that? And I'm hoping you asked what date Term Limits Day was. I don't know what day of the week it is. I should look that up.
Hey, Scott, you've been involved in this for a lot of time. There's a question that is in the comments that says, put this on the ballot, let's vote on it. Address that real quick.
So we did. We put this on the ballot and people voted on it in several states, more than several. We had, now I
think it was 23
or 24 states passed term limits. Most of those at the ballot on their own congressional delegation. We had more than a majority of congressmen and senators, or, you know, House and Senate members in Congress would have been term limited. We had put it on the ballot. We'd gone that route. That was the way to do this because the people want it. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court in a court case in 1994 4, which was decided in 1995. It was U.S. term limits versus Thornton, where a congressman from Arkansas and another group called the League of Women Voters and a couple of other individuals sued and said, you can't go, essentially what they were saying was you can't limit our ability to ask. And what what the Supreme Court ended up deciding in a 5-4 decision was that it couldn't go state by state, and it would require a constitutional amendment to term limit Congress. And of course, you know, Congress doesn't want to term limit themselves. So it has become an issue where we need to take it to the states directly. We still work on a pledge program to get Congress members to pledge to support a term limits amendment. And we currently have 69 or 70 members of the current Congress have signed that pledge. And then there are other members who have co-sponsored the legislation. That's SJR 1 and HJR 20, respectively, in the House and Senate. And so we're pushing that legislation. We're working on getting that legislation passed. If anybody wants, they can go and check out Nick Tumblee's testimony. You can find that at our YouTube channel and see, because we had testimony on that bill in the Senate, or that resolution, they call those, in the Senate in June or July. I think it was in June. So anybody who has not viewed that should go check it out, because Nick really, I don't know if it was the best way to go about congressional testimony to influence congressmen, but he went there and spoke the truth about what the people think and what the people want. And it's very exciting to see somebody go there and tell it how it is. So please go and check out Nick's testimony, because it was a breath of fresh air.
Hey, Scott, we need to say goodbye to Jeff. He's freezing, our keeper of the pig. He's up there, you know, freezing with that pig. You know, where that pig goes, Jeff goes, and I think we got to get him indoors.
Yeah, we got him up in the UP today. So he's up in northern Michigan, as everybody knows, or maybe everybody doesn't know. Michigan has 2 pieces. There's an upper peninsula and a lower peninsula connected by the Mackinac Bridge. And for the past couple of days, Jeff has been north of the bridge. So it's snowy and cold up there because of all the lake effect snow. And he'll be up and around Lake Superior and some different parts of we call it the UP, which is the upper peninsula, for tomorrow yet. And then he'll be headed back downstate after that.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. You guys are doing a terrific job out there. And, you know, we pretty much nailed everything that we wanted to cover today, except I wanted to do a couple of specific asks, and I do have an announcement I want to make. We do now have 2 primary sponsors for our resolution in the state of Mississippi. We will be active in the state of Mississippi. We will have a resolution filed there. We'll probably most likely have a joint resolution being filed in the House and the Senate. The language is being drafted as we speak. So what does that mean? That means we need volunteers in the state of Mississippi like there is no tomorrow. That legislative session is going to be starting soon. We obviously need them in every state. North Carolina, South Carolina, we need them in Mississippi, we need them in Louisiana, we need them everywhere, Texas, you name it, we need them. But Mississippi is going to be very important to us. It's a tough state to pass. So we need your help. I also need help Louisiana. I'm going to need a lot of help in South Carolina, West Virginia. We have a new state director in Virginia, the state of Virginia. And we've got 2 co-state directors in the state of West Virginia, Aaron Duquette and Shanna Chambly. And so we've got it going on. And we need you to step up and get involved. So Ron, what's your ask for tonight?
Yeah, same thing. We really need to, we think this is a real movement year, especially in 2 of our big states on the West Coast, Arizona and Utah. Arizona especially, we have a big battle we've passed in the House, and we need to pass in the Senate. So we're going to need people to write their legislature and let them know the support for term limits. Volunteers to just send out petition to friends. We need volunteers that'll show up for the term limits day on February 27th. And I know both Ian Phillips, our state director in Utah, and Jim Levy, our state director in Arizona, would just love to hear from you. Regardless of amount of time that you have or your skill capabilities, we can find a role for you as a volunteer. And it's very I
had forgotten to mention Georgia. We were going to have our Georgia state director on with us tonight, but he had technical issues trying to connect to the technology we use to do these broadcasts. We've already passed the Senate in Georgia. All we need to do now is pass the House, and we need to motivate the Speaker of the House to give us a vote. We have the votes to pass, and I need all the help I can get calling that speaker and saying, hey, dude, give us a vote. That's all you got to do. Say those words, give us a vote, and we will pass the state of Georgia and put that one in the win column. So I need your help there desperately. Scott, what do you got?
Well, before we do wrap this up, there is one thing that I would like to talk about. We're working heavily in Louisiana this year, and I just saw a comment that we have Ruth Johnson McIver on, and her father, Rence Johnson, was one of the most instrumental people in the early term limits movement. And he actually, he got the movement started in Louisiana. And unlike other states where you could put this on the ballot, Rence had to go through the Louisiana legislature and get the politicians to actually vote for term limits. And he did something that nobody else did, and actually got term limits passed on the Louisiana state legislature. If we ever put up a monument for term limits, his name should be right there at the top, most prominently featured. The amount of work that Rence did and whatnot and went into the movement was huge. He passed in 2015, and we lost a person who was hugely involved with getting the entire movement up and launched back in the late 80s, early 90s, and who really was a driving force behind it. And we all owe a debt of gratitude to him and other people who worked with him to get this started. So I'm glad to see Ruth on viewing our broadcast today, and special thanks. And we should all think of Rence when we think of term limits.
Hear, hear.
Amen. Amen to that. That's terrific stuff. That's terrific stuff. So do we have any other questions that we need to address? We would like to address. We already announced our winner. And so Ron or Ken, did you guys see any questions in here that I happened to miss that we want to address? I think you covered the ballot issue pretty well. We get asked that question a lot when we're on this broadcast, why we can't just put it on the ballot and vote on it.
Been there, did that, got the t-shirt basically.
The Supreme Court said we have to amend the Constitution. So that's what we're going to do. That's why we invoke Article 5, because that gives you the format on how to do it. And so here we are. That's what we're doing. We're going to do what they said we have to do.
Let me just mention what's happening in a couple of my states. If you are in Pennsylvania, I really need your help. We are going to be, we currently have a live resolution. It's HR 444. It's in the House. It's currently sitting at the State Government Committee. And we are working really hard to whip count the members of that committee. I'm going to be actually at the Capitol on Tuesday. If any of you can hear my voice and you live in Pennsylvania, email me if there's any possibility that you can join me at the Capitol on Tuesday. We want to try to meet as many legislators as possible, especially on the committee. There's actually going to be a hearing that day on another Article 5 that I'm there to help support, and that does include term limits for Congress. So we want to show support for that. So just email me at kquinn@termlimits.com if you're in Pennsylvania, and we're trying to grow a team there, and we could use as much support as possible, and hopefully I'll see you on Tuesday. The other thing I wanted to quickly mention was we are rapidly heading into the session in most of the states. And so please pay attention to our calls to action up on our website. We're going to be hitting a lot of the committees. We're going to have filings, introductions. We're going to be doing Capitol days. We're going to need as much support from all of you out there. So things are going to get really hectic for us. And oftentimes what that means, if we're going to be flying on the seat of our pants pretty much. And so have patience with us. If you reach out to us with a voicemail or an email, a call, and it takes us some time to get back to you, it's probably because we're traveling and we're dealing with something that's really hot right now. So just have a little patience. That's pretty much all I wanted to cover. I did want to mention the correct answer, and Tom got it right. Tom Only, I believe. I posted his name. We'll get that T-shirt out to you. 32 states to call. 34 states to call and 38 to ratify. Good job, Tom. And I'll be in touch. Great. Scott, it's awesome having you on tonight, man.
Yeah, that was fun, man.
Thank you for having me on.
That was really cool what you were talking about in Louisiana. That's really neat. I really like that.
Yeah,
that's inspiring.
One thing that Ren spoke about a lot and was that he made very clear was a small group of people that actually, gets behind an issue that has a lot of public support can make a huge difference with it. And as we're going into these legislative sessions in all these different states, don't think that just because you're one person or, there's only you and maybe one other person you can bring with you that, you're going to go down there and you're going to be outnumbered by lobbyists or it's just not going to make a difference. Going down there and showing up, making a couple of calls, really letting legislators know. I mean, that actually moves the ball. And, Rent's got that and he put it to good effect in Louisiana and showed other people how to do it in other states and made a huge, huge difference. So going into this session, keep that in mind. A few of us can do a whole lot showing up. We live in a great country where people don't have to be worried about their government 24/7. A lot of people can go out there and have a great, happy life without ever having to be politically involved. But when we do get politically involved, because so few people do, our impact is even bigger. So if you can show up in the spring and help us, I say the spring, but in January, February, to help us in your state, it will really go a long way.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. Amen. Amen. Any other questions you can find there, Ken?
Yeah, let me just do one last check here. So I just want to highlight, obviously, Term Limits Day is February 27th. Sorry, Ron, it's going to go over your face there. I apologize.
I thought it was an improvement.
It's nothing personal. No, I think
Thursday this year, February 27th.
Thursday. Which reminds me. So if we're doing this on Thursday in the evening, I would like to see some really pictures. There's got to be a way that we can incorporate our live stream with events around the country. So I want everyone thinking about that. So next week, think of how we can kind of bring you into our live feed next week. Maybe you can send us some pictures prior to us going on so we can pull them up, stuff that you did during the day, get it to us, and then we can share it that night and just show people around the country what took place during the day, stuff like that.
Well,
it'll be really fun.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Jeff just come on with his cell phone? So we might be able to get a couple of live streams going too.
Yeah.
Because right now you're looking at a screen with me in South Carolina, Ron in Arizona, Ken Quinn in Michigan, in Maine, and Scott in Michigan. And we're all spread out all over the country. We could do that. That could be fun.
Yeah, and Jeff's phone came in great too.
Yeah, it did. That really worked well.
Yeah. Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah, that was a really good test run for this. That was cool.
All right, guys. Well, I think that's a wrap tonight. We came in just under the wire of our 45 minutes limit, so I'm glad. That was good.
Nice job, Quinn.
It wasn't me. It was you guys tonight.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.